embarked on a study that focused on vulnerable households living in low-cost flats in Kuala Lumpur. These same households were then followed during MCO in 2020 and 2021. Their experiences, challenges, and stories of resilience were captured in the UNFPA and UNICEF four-part project called Families on the Edge. Living on the Edge goes back to these same households and provides a longitudinal picture of their lives after MCO. We are now in a context of both recovery and growth, but also of increasing prices and cost of living. We had the unique opportunity of getting a picture of their lives before, during, and after COVID. This gave us an understanding of areas of improvement and struggle for these vulnerable households. While the results do not speak for all households in Malaysia, it is a powerful snapshot that does speak about the households that live in low-cost flats in Kuala Lumpur and can shed light on the realities of vulnerable children and their families. Media friends, the key findings presented today hope to provide first-hand evidence from the ground. We hope that it will support the continuous efforts of the government of Malaysia to eliminate poverty. These efforts have led to undeniable and tangible gains and improvements in the well-being of its people. Yet some households, specifically those led by women and by people with disabilities, are still encountering barriers and challenges and are being left behind. It prevents them from enjoying a life free of poverty, affecting their well-being and the future potential of their children. Ensuring full recovery from the effects of the pandemic means caring for the most vulnerable, low-income families, especially households that are led by women, and individuals with disabilities. Life isn't solely about sustenance, but also about the quality of living. Investing in both ensures that children and families not only survive, but they also thrive. I am grateful to DM Analytics for the commitment to seeing this project through and their stark commitment to making sure that the voices of those who participated in this study are captured and translated into meaningful findings. Dr. Muhammad will share them with you today. But I want to end really by thanking those 755 women and men living in the low-cost flats in Kuala Lumpur who gave their time to participate in this study. Without their honest answers on the participation, today's findings would not have been possible. On behalf of UNICEF Malaysia, we thank you for your participation today. Thank you for your interest in poverty eradication and for your commitment to support children reach their full potential. No matter where they live, no matter where they come from, let's leave no child behind. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Monica. I'll share with you the key findings of the report. Like Dr. Monica said, is a continuation from the studies that we did during the pandemic. Now I'm going to look at the impact of cost of living. Maybe I summarize what this report is all about. To me, this report personally is about resilience of the families that live in low-cost flats. Despite the pandemic, despite the cost of living, they're very resilient. They're not giving up. They're very independent and very without asking or wanting handouts. What they want is that they want to improve themselves. They want high wages, not other things. So it dispels a lot of myth or cerita dongeng that sometimes we have in our mind. So it's a story, if I can summarize it, it's a story of resilience among those most vulnerable who want to experience an upward mobility for their children. I'll share with you key findings, and then I go into the detail. One of the key findings, there are a couple of key findings in this report. Number one, since pandemic up to October last year, where we did our survey, household income has improved. Unemployment has improved. It's a good story. As we open up the economy, people go back to work. For the families that we followed, about 30% we followed, their income has increased by 32%. Among women-headed families, increased by 33%. These are good stories. But despite the increase, their wage is still low. For instance, the wages for people with disability is only 1,550. It's almost at minimum wage level. So income has moved. Unemployment rate also has declined, but it's still higher for certain groups. Disabled, unemployment rate among disabled is about 10%. Income goes up, people go back to work, but it's still high unemployment for certain groups. Despite improvement in labor market and earnings, poverty still remains high. One has to remember, poverty rate in KL, one of the richest states in Malaysia, is less than 2%. So 1.4, 1.5%. Poverty rate in low-cost flats in KL is 41%. It's much, much higher. Although it reduced, but from 45% during pandemic. It reduced, but it's alarmingly very high. Among female-headed households, it's about 60%. So 6 out of 10 live below poverty line. Among people with household with disability, 67%. So earnings has improved, unemployment has improved, while a lot of people still poor, much higher than national or state level. Hardcore poverty. In KL, hardcore poverty is 0. There's no more hardcore poverty. In low-cost flats, hardcore poverty rate is 8%. Household with disability, hardcore rate is 17%. It's very high. And when you look who are the most vulnerable, we look UNICEF, they look at children, the most vulnerable, almost 95%, almost all kids live below relative poverty. Relative poverty, half a median income. If you look just at absolute level, absolute poverty rate, 40%, 4 out of 10 in low-cost flats live below poverty. So the first point, income has improved, unemployment has improved, but they remain vulnerable because a lot of them still live in poverty. So next. Key highlight number 2. Although they're back to work, majority are workers. Number of self-employed has declined from 1.4 to 1.5. Many of them are not protected. If you're formal sector workers, you must have EPF, you must also must be protected. No? It's compulsory. But among all workers in the area that we studied, 40% have no social protection. And it's particularly worse among those self-employed. For us, easy to remember, makcik. Now, 92% of makcik, or those who work in the informal sector, are not covered. Which means, when we do account 3, for instance, EPF withdrawal, nobody, majority of them, do not benefit. If they go to work, something happens to them, they are not protected. What kind of system then they have? We find the coverage is rather good, 70% in the household in the area that we studied have some form of social assistance. 68% receive sumbangan tunai ramah. If your household income below 5,000, you will get sumbangan tunai ramah, which is good. About 70% receive it, 23% receive zakat. However, the coverage can be further improved. If your income below 5,000, you are eligible and you should get sumbangan tunai ramah. But 1 in 3 of those that earn income below 5,000 do not get the assistance. So coverage can still be improved, social protection and assistance program. That's highlight number 2. Highlight number 3, Mr. Zuhair. Then we want to see what's the impact of cost of living. There's a study all about. Before we look at the impact of the pandemic, now we look at the cost of living. How do they feel? Majority of them said we are struggling. In time said it's difficult to cope with the increase of cost of living. In fact, the higher number said now is much more difficult. During the pandemic, only 7 out of 10 say it's difficult. Now 8 out of 10 say it's more difficult, struggle. And what are you struggling about? They say, particularly increasing prices, mostly about food. Food prices. 50% says it's getting worse. Then we ask them, how do you cope? We work harder. That's why I say this is a story of resilience, not just tunggu or hope things work out. No, they work to make things better. So how do you manage the increase? Of course, I work harder, I work longer, I do double jobs. I reduce my expenditure, either on non-essential items or I reduce my food intake. And the reduction of food intake is translated to the children. One out of two children eat less than 3 times a day. If this is a mitigating factor, how to reduce? Which means it would have impact on children well-being in the long run. Where we put there 1 or 2 eating less than 3 months a day. This is 50% of kids less than 3 times a day. Either they skip breakfast or they skip lunch or they skip dinner. Key highlight number 4. When they eat less, we ask, what do you eat more? We eat more eggs. The consumption of eggs goes up because protein is the cheapest protein. The consumption of rice went up, and the consumption of instant noodle went up. This also would have an impact in the well-being in the long run. So even when we look at poverty in terms of income, which I mentioned earlier, you look at poverty in terms of nutrition, we also have problems. Poverty must look at on multi-dimensional level, not just on income. There also, we ask them about impact to education. So parents are very worried about the quality of education, and also access of education. Access of education in particular to those children who are disabled. So they're worried the access and the quality. And notably, they're very worried cost of living impact them directly because co-curricular goes up, tuition goes up, net bus goes up, everything goes up. Next, key highlight number 5. How does that impact them? Are you stressed? We ask them, how does this cost of living impact them? Majority, 3 out of 4, what do they say? Is impacting their mental well-being. So they're mentally stressed. 1 in 4 reported that they feel depressed. So 1 in 4 is about 25% of head of household in low-cost flat feel they are depressed. And we ask them, how do you think the future will look like? During pandemic, 1 in 4 says it's going to be very difficult. Now it's higher. More household things that are more pessimistic of the future. Last highlight. Next. So we ask them, we rarely do this. We ask them, what do you need? What do you want to mitigate all this, to address all this? The first, the most cited policy options that they say is higher wages, not cash assistance, not handouts, higher wages, so I can take care of my family. Higher wages, number 1. That's why I say in the beginning, this is a story of resilience, this is a story of independence. This is a story of wanting upward mobility for the children. Higher wages, I'll take care of the family. That's the most cited policy options that they want. Followed by maintaining cash assistance program. Then we ask them, what policies at the moment that you think most useful? First we ask what they want. Second we ask what the policy that they find most useful. Sumbangan to Dharma is useful. Price control on food items is also important. When we ask them about fuel subsidy, because there's a lot of discussion on fuel subsidy, how many think this is a good policy, that beneficial to them? Only 7% says it is useful. Why do they say this? Because many of the B40 do not benefit, because either they don't own cars, they own motorcycle, or even they use it a small amount compared to the very rich. So there is public support in farming through subsidy if the government wants to do it. Those are the 6 key highlights, summary of this, the findings that we did in low-cost flat in KL. I'll go slightly in detail. Another 20 minutes, then we can have Q&A. Next. Ronita already told this. We did this last year. We interviewed 4 rounds. This previous, sorry. We did 17 PPR. We interviewed about 755 households in KL. The background of them, 755 households with about 1,691 children, all total household member, about 4,000 household member. Average number of children is 2.2. This number I personally like because another cerita dongeng. Because we always think the poor people, low income people have many children. It's not true. It's only 2.2, about 2. What's the KL number? It's about 1.5. So low income people do not have many children. We thought that they are very responsible. It's not true. If you look in Terengganu, Kedah, what's the average number of children? Less than 3. The overall number of children in Malaysia per family has declined. Average number of children in low-cost flats is about 2.2, with average age of 10. There are slightly higher percentage of single parents or single mother in low-cost flat, about 26% to 23%. Household headed by disability, about 2%. That's about national average. 3 generations in one family, about 21%. 1 in 5 would have grandmother, mother, and children. Ada juga yang nenek take care, grandparents take care, about 15%. There's also a higher number of households with 1 or more chronic diseases. About 45% with at least 1 chronic diseases. And almost 94% of children have vaccinated. Good number. This is some snapshot of who they are. If you want to interview them where they are, we can facilitate that one. Next. The key finding number 1, I will explain in detail. This is the families that we track. About 30% of them, total sample, we track them 4 times. During pandemic, a couple of times until today. What do we find? Like I mentioned earlier, income has increased, earnings has rebound, female household all increased. Before pandemic, it's about 2,002, now about 3,000 for total household. For female, 1,003 to about 1,006. But when we compare among all responded, household median earnings, total household is 2,005. It's basically poverty line level. For female-headed household, it's below poverty, is 2,000. Household headed by a person with disability, 1,550. Remember, although earnings have improved, the labor market has improved, the wages is improved, but it's still low, very low. Next. Unemployment rate among those that we sampled also has improved from 4.7 during the pandemic to 3.4 for total household. That's Malaysia. For total household from 12 to 6, half female from 16 to 7. It's good. We see because the economy has opened up. Next slide. But among all respondents in low-cost flats, total household 12% is unemployed. Among female-headed household, 30% is unemployed. Household headed with disabilities about 10%. Next slide. So poverty rate, earnings improved. Poverty rate also slightly improved. During the height of the pandemic, improved from 45% to 41%. This is the family that we track. Among female, 62 to 59. Children, 44 to 40. It improved. But what strikes us is that the number is very high. You have to remember, poverty rate in KL is less than 2%. And we're not talking in Guam, we're talking about KL. Tribesmen in KL. KL is a city, is a country, is already high income. And yet a lot of, among us, live below poverty line. This is the family that we track. So next. household, we add all the household, not just that we track, almost the same. Total household, 47 below poverty. Again, remember, KL poverty rate less than 2%. 47% in low cost flat, female headed household 1 in 2, poor person with disability 67%, children 47%. It's very high. This should not be our number because we are high income state. Relative poverty. If you rich country, you don't look at absolute. You look at relative. Half of median income. It's much higher. If you use OECD measurement, 83% of households live in low cost flat, 83% considered poor. If your children, 93% considered poor. 9 out of 10 children, if you use OECD measurement, are poor. I'm going to pause this for 20 seconds so they can remember this slide. This is a very powerful slide. Because it tells that despite that GDP is very high, despite that on average poverty is almost reduced or eradicated, but there are pockets of poverty still exist in the middle of KL and live among us. Why I pause? Because I think it's important to solve any problem. The first step to realize that we have a problem. And this remains a major problem for us that everybody needs to solve. Next. Hardcore poverty is the same. Hardcore poverty rate in KL is 0. Total household 8%, disability 70%, children 7%. Hardcore means that if you earn less than about 1,100, you consider poor. Next one. So everybody gone back to work, majority have gone back to work. Among all the family that we followed, self-employed actually declined. They become more wage earners. Before 25%, 1 in 4 self-employed, kerja sendiri. Now become 1 in 5. More people coming, kerja, makan, gaji. The same for female-headed household. Also the same. Household members also the same. And so on. However, when we look, your work is very good. Are you protected? In Malaysia, if you're a formal sector employee, you must be protected by law, which means you must have EPF, you must have SOCSO. EPF and SOCSO. Not all has EPF and SOCSO. No protection. Male 42, female 38. Even among employees, the 26% do not have social protection, whereas they should be 0. Among Machikia, I mentioned earlier, 92% do not have any social protection. One of our recommendations that I will share later, every workers, regardless of sector, either in Machikia, informal sector or formal sector, you must be protected. It must be made compulsory, not optional. Next. So we also look not just social protection, but social assistance. What kind of benefit that you get if you have income constraint? About 72% of them have at least one or more social assistance, either you have zakat, sumbangan tunai ramah, or jabatan kebajikan masyarakat. Sumbangan tunai ramah about 68%, zakat waqf 3%, JKM is about 8%. However, the coverage needs to be improved. If you earn less than 2,000, 100% should get sumbangan tunai ramah. In fact, anybody earn less than 5,000, you are eligible for sumbangan tunai ramah. But less than 2,000, only 70% get. 30% do not get. And what I like also, is quite depressing, even those above 6,000 are not supposed to get. Half of those who reported income more than 5,000 receive sumbangan tunai ramah. So there's exclusion error, inclusion error. People who are supposed to get it, do not get it. People who are not supposed to get it, get it. Next. Next. That is on income and employment. How about cost of living? We ask, are you affected? 93% say yes, we are affected. How does it compare to last year? Better or same? Better is only 16%, for female 60%, for head also with disability only 8%. How many say it's worse than last year? Last year, this 2022, because we did this 2023, last year 2022, pandemic still. 46% of the household now, or in October, say it's going to be worse. It's much higher among persons with disability. So a lot of them say the key is my current financial situation is quite bad. And you have to remember, this is done before SST expansion, before electricity subsidy changes, before low value good taxes, before soon to become fuel subsidy optimization. They already feel that the current financial situation now is much worse. Next. Is it enough? Are you impacted? Yes. Is it enough? Your income? 72% say it's not sufficient. 1 in 4 is sufficient. Household with disability is the highest. They're the most vulnerable. Remember, the income is the lowest, 1550. Is it enough? The answer is 92% say it's not enough. Next. Then, how does it impact the children? Remember, I told you earlier about number of children eating. How many times does a child eat in a day? Before pandemic, 45% is already bad. That's why they study that children without, that they did to measure malnutrition, stunting. Dr. Amjad here, he was in UNICEF. The number is already high. 45% eat less than 3 times a day. Now, between 2019 and now, economy has expanded, economy has recovered, household income has increased. But the number of children who eat less than 3 times a day is increased. It should decrease. The country getting richer, our kids eating less. Female headed household or even household with disability 1 in 2 eat less than 3 times a day. Next. Let me ask, what are the challenges that you face to provide nutritious meals for your children? High price is number 1, income is number 2. Next. Then we wanted to know from the coach, how do you face this? Of course, the game is very difficult. I'm less inclined to read all this. It's very important, but I want you to focus on this. Very compassionate people. What does it say? This is a quiz seller. Remember which PPR is this? Income is less. Cannot cope. She's a quiz seller. What did she do? I will not increase my prices. I don't want to trouble you. I don't want to make life harder for my neighbors and for my friends and for the customer. Kami tak mahu susahkan orang. It's a good code. It's a good attitude. It's a positive attitude. In fact, she said, saya akan kurangkan harga juga boleh. In fact, so you should get the address so everybody can go and support her. Alright. Next. In the slides, in the booklet, we mentioned they eat less. 1 in 2 eat less. But we also ask, what do you eat more? The consumption of eggs went up because it's cheap protein, like I mentioned. Rice goes up. Instant noodle also went up. About 46% more eating instant noodle. So how do you cope? I reduce the number 1 strategy. Reduce non-food. I reduce non-food consumption. I use my saving, whatever left saving or from EPF, and I reduce food, as well as I do extra work. Next. See? This is what I mentioned about 7 in 10 spend more on eggs and rice compared to 2020. 2020, family that consume eggs 52% increased to 71%, rice to 71%, instant noodle from 40 to 56%. It is not healthy. Next. So the coping mechanism, there are multiple, it's very difficult. There are households who told us they have to borrow from Along and they try to settle it. There's also this. Suami saya jual telefon bimbit. These very essential items. They have no choice but to sell handphone. There's also cerita dongeng that families, low-income families, don't take care of children or education in particular, do not know how to prioritize income and expenditure, or the expenditure is not true. This self-employed woman, when the kids need medical care, she doesn't have enough money. What does she do? I don't eat because I want healthcare for the children. We have a lot of myth about low income, but I like to say cerita dongeng. It's not true. The need for betterment of children is reflected in these studies and previous studies that have been done by others, including by UNICEF in Malaysia. Next. This is a coping mechanism. How does it impact education? Next. We wanted to know, do the kids go to school? Preschool. 71% goes to preschool, 30% do not go. Very low, because national is 87%. When it comes to primary, lower secondary, upper secondary, they do better than Malaysian average. So we think that they do not care about education. That is not true. Primary, lower secondary, upper secondary is true, although it is slightly low. And to put things in context, remember, they start late. Basically, they start school late. They eat less. Parents not doing well. What happened to the academic results? The academic result, based on a study done by UNICEF in 2019, is better. Better than national average. Now imagine if they go to school earlier, they eat better, healthcare, quality of education better. All of them will fly. Social mobility will be positive. Despite the constraint, pergi sekolah lambat, start late. Basically, on the starting line, I start late. I eat less. I still do better. That's why I said in the beginning, this is for your resilience, not giving up. Next. We did not look at CPI. We asked the parents, do you think the cost of living has impacted, or the cost of education has impacted? They say yes. Majority say yes, especially for those household head with disability. 82% said yes, school fees, everything has gone up. Next. What's the biggest concern for your children's education? Access to education, 50%, they can answer multiple. Unable to prepare children to get a good job, 20% says that. Dealing with learning difficulties and special needs, 1 in 3, about 8 of households worry about that, about their children. A safe and conducive learning environment. So the idea, how do you make education inclusive to all, in particular to person with disability. Next. There's also parents who cannot afford in care to send their children to school. This full-time housewife, anak saya tak sekolah, saya tidak mampu. Saya tersepit, duit tak cukup, baju mahal. Penjagaan anak POQ cost a lot of money. And like this also. Bila anak balik sekolah, minta tolong to do homework, they cannot do, and they feel stressed because they cannot help. Nak hantar tuition, mahal. Pakai sukan pun mahal. These voices on the ground. So the struggle is very real. Next. That's on education. How about health? How does it impact cost of living? Poverty, education, how does it impact them? How's your health now compared to during pandemic? or academic period. 26% is better, 42% say the same, 31% say worse. For household with disability, nearly 60% say it's worse now. You are no longer in epidemic, no more COVID, but they think that health condition have deteriorated. Next. We also want to know about access to sexual health and fertility services. You put that is quite troubling. Do you know where you can find sexual health and fertility services? 54% say yes among male, female, only 56% say yes. 44% among female say no, I do not know. And when we split by education level, don't focus on this, focus on this. Even those with tertiary education, university degrees, 30% say, I do not know where to get it. I do not know where to get sexual health and fertility services and information. And it's much higher among those with primary and no formal education. Next. Where did they get the information? This is good. They get from healthcare providers, which means Ministry of Health has done an excellent job to provide information. Online for female about 28%. If online from Ministry of Health, which we should delve deeper, we did not. 30% can online. We're not sure either online Ministry of Health or online from kawan-kawan or misleading websites. But from healthcare providers, it's only 93%. Family and friends, about 12%. Or in other words, 40% come from here. But we can have choose multiple answers. Next. So it's good they know where to get the information. Perkhidmatan kesihatan sebelum dan selepas bersalin bagus. This I think one thing that we should prioritize our healthcare, public healthcare services. There are some issues about delay, too lama, whatever, right? But the services, like this this pregnant mother says, it is very good, and doctors give them good advice. Next. Psychological well-being, psychosocial well-being. Does the rising cost of living affect your mental well-being? 74% say yes. For females, 70% say yes. Household with utility, 75% say yes. 75 majority of them say it affects my mental well-being. Next slide. How do you describe your current mental state? No problem. 70 in September 2020 said no problem. 72% come the pandemic. 72% say no problem. Pandemic is over, only 60% say no problem. So we look at, or in other words, how many feel depressed? Before, during the pandemic, between 21 to 19, there's no more pandemic. It increased to 28%. 20% of households feel that they are depressed. Among female, also increased, although it's just slightly. Next. We asked, how do you expect the financial situation will be in the future? 30% say it's going to continue to deteriorate compared to 25% in 2022. So they're more depressed, and they think that it's going to get worse on the financial situation. Next. Policy choices. Okay. What do you guys want? We ask them. What policy that you want government to introduce? What are the most things that you need right now? 40% said, I want higher salary. Much higher than cash assistance. Higher salary is number one. Perhaps many of us would think this should be the answer. Subsidies, because we keep hearing mental subsidy, but not for these people. It's not mental, it's not subsidies. I want to improve. You give me fair wages, I'll take care of my family. 40% said, I want higher salary. Even among those who are most vulnerable, person with disability, cash assistance is important. Many of them difficult to get jobs. also want. 1 in 3, give me capital to start our business. It's a good story. Remember, story of resilience, independent. Next. So the government gives assistance at the moment. We ask which one is the most useful. Cash assistance is useful. Subsidies yang currently useful. Education schooling because banyak free kan, so it's not really important. Subsidy for petrol, only 7% say it is useful to them. Next, what do we recommend? Moving forward, what are the policy options that we hope the policy makers, and for us, you guys are a very powerful group that can assist to push. Number 1, we know children are the most vulnerable. We are suggesting this is not something new. We are suggesting many such as this. Universal child care allowance. We have a malnutrition issue. So first 1,000 days from the stomach until the first 2 years, every children in Malaysia would get cash assistance, cash allowance on a monthly period to be given to the mother. The cost is very little and easily affordable. We put the number in the form. Number 2, the most deprived among the deprived is person with disability. Not everybody get assistance. We suggest universal allowance. Everybody would get cash allowance, monthly allowance, including to their caregiver. Because grandparents, other father, sibling, whoever to take care of person with disability should be given adequate income security and employment support. Universal child care allowance and universal allowance for person with disability. To give to all children, to give to all PWDs, should not be targeted. Then you would argue, oh, the rich also get it. There are ways to also to mitigate that. You can give a tax deduction if the rich file for it. There's ways to do this, but you shouldn't exclude. Give to all. This is the first 2 recommendation. Number 3, enhancements to social assistance. Now, this is particular to Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat. We only give to hardcore poor, those income below 1,001, which means you're food deprived. But we are suggesting that many families that do not only face food difficulties, food insufficiencies, there are many challenges. So to expand that to not hardcore poverty, but anybody below poverty line should be given assistance. Number 4, I mentioned earlier in the report about sexual reproductive health awareness. 30% have some issues. We say to use community outreach for informed decision making and invest in mental health support through community-based intervention. This is for MOH. Number 5, one of the things that I want to say, fair wages. I want higher wages. What should be the level? Current minimum wage is 1,005. If you use the same methodology as how government calculate minimum wage, we suggest the amount should be set at 2,100, at least, to increase to 2,100 ringgit. This is slightly lower than Bank Negara proposed 2,700 as living wage. We are proposing living minimum wage at least 2,100. Fair wages. At the same time, you get fair wages, you must also be protected. Every workers, what we're recommending, every workers, regardless of sector, formal, informal, regardless, must be mandatory to contribute to EPF and so to protect them against injury, employment, and inadequate or no income during old age. These are the 6 recommendations that we are pushing. I hope you will write about it so the government and the policymaker can take serious consideration and hopefully actions to implement these 6 policies that we recommend. You can download the report. You can click on the QR code. You can download the report. It's going to be on UNICEF website also. do we want from this report? Why do we do this report? Dr. Wanita has explained. I think it's important to remind ourselves and policymakers that while we have done well in certain areas, but in many areas we can do much better, especially those who are most vulnerable. And we carefully choose the topic, the title of this report, Living on the Edge, because that's what is on the edge. Pandemic, pre-pandemic, they still stand tall. Cost of living, they still stand tall. But it's a lot of challenges. And the title that we chose is homage to Shannon Ahmad, our great author, Ranjau Sepanjang Jalan. The story of a farmer, in fact, in Kedah. Despite many challenges, they never this is the same story of the people that we interviewed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad. Now it's a time for Q&A. Juanita, would you like to come up as well to answer questions? So we have Dr. Juanita and Dr. Muhammad. So we open the floor for questions. Please say your name, media title, and who you want to address the questions to.
Address to Dr. Wanita.
Yeah, just raise your hand.
Sorry
Yes,
for
sir.
the report stated, mentioned about large exclusion areas. Right? I think I remember you telling me that this is happening even since the Brave days, and why is it still happening?
The World Bank report also mentioned the same thing when they published that the coverage is not universal. At least those who are supposed to get it. Let me answer differently. How do you make sure that those who are supposed to get it get it? Our strategy at the moment, our policy is to go and register them. We have to find who the poor people. Another easier, this is not UNICEF position, this is my position. Easier answer, instead of to find out the poor, it's better to find out who's the rich. You exclude the rich, and you include everybody else. It's much cheaper, it's more cost savings, and it will ensure nobody is excluded.
Anyone?
You want to add, Monica?
I think exclusion areas are not only happening in Malaysia. Ideally, you'd be able to find and do perfect targeting, but that's impossible. And you need, and poverty is dynamic. So, one day you might be below the threshold, something happens in your household, there's a shock, you're not covered the next day. So, being able to update all these databases and find poor is really, really hard. Which is why we're also saying, okay, it should be universal. And excluding the rich is also a possibility if it's not, the funds are not enough. Another way of doing it is strengthening the social service workforce, making sure that there's enough social workers on the ground that are dealing and being able to have a close relationship with the communities and are able to identify who the poor are. So I think there's different ways of going about this exclusion.
Joseph from the South China Morning Post. We just want to zoom in on the point of 1 in every 2 children not having enough to eat every day. This is not the first time that the report has identified this. When you released it, I think in 2020, you were talking about malnutrition and stunting. What do you think is the issue here now? Is the government not doing anything to help? Are people just falling through the gaps as the assistance, the slide on assistance has shown that these 30% are not getting it? What can be done?
I think maybe you can have this afterwards, but I think I'll just go back to the findings. When people are asked why cannot they give proper nutrition to the children, the answer is clear. The prices are too high. And what can be done, I think it links back to the recommendations. Higher wages, and in some cases increased cash assistance.
There are multiple options can be used to address this. Higher wages, parents can take care of the children, which they want. They do not ask for assistance. cash allowance also help. But can you look also in many countries where malnutrition is very low, the government take over in providing at least quality meal, healthy meal to kids. How do they do that? They give free meal in school, which I think there was a time before to do this. I think government feel that there's too much fiscal constraint, which I do not believe. I do not support that argument that we do not have enough money. We have more than enough money to ensure every kid in Malaysia, at least in primary school or preschool, have quality meal funded by taxpayers. If you want to find out where the money, more subsidy, fuel subsidy for the rich, you already get 12 billion can be channeled to feed the kids in school. This is not cost, this is an investment with higher return in the long run.
Question for you guys. Have there been any engagement with the government with regards to universal income proposal, and how have you responded to that?
We did not engage them on
There is one initial engagement happening in Sarawak where we are modeling a cash transfer that, and I think it also links back to the last question, where we're trying to integrate cash with services. So there's been enough evidence to show that cash alone might not move the needle when it comes to nutrition, stunting, and other types of multi-dimensional poverty. So in many countries, in Thailand and others, they've linked social or cash assistance to nutrition programs, for example, parenting programs, linking those two together. We hope to start modeling these in Sarawak, but the state government still needs to agree to these models. So some modeling of universal cash together with other services will start to take place for now in Sarawak.
Anyone else? With burning questions, pressing questions that you have to ask?
Richard Marshall from the UN Resident Coordinator's Office. I think you know me already. I wasn't going to ask a question, but I also want to say it's a very strong contribution, and I really welcome this research. It's really striking. It fits in very well, with your previous rounds, and it really tells a story, I think, that's very, very interesting and very useful to policymakers and to researchers and academics. So my question, though, is about the policy agenda you map out. Is a familiar one. There's plenty of people advocating this, but did you do anything to cost this, or to look at the economic implications of this? Because I suspect there will be a fiscal cost, but there's also probably a fiscal benefit through multiplier effects in the economy, and also then in the long term effects on growth. I wonder if, maybe that's your next stage. I don't know.
Jay, can you read out fiscal cost in the chart and PWD? This is the report. Here's my co-author. There's three co-authors. Give him a chance to answer.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for the question. Yeah, we did, but the cost is less than 0.2% of GDP. But I understand your point probably is more on the bigger scale of the impact of the spending of the household, how much will it increase. That one we did not do it yet, but it's a good point. We might consider to do it also. Thank you.
If you're asking how much would it cost, the universal child allowance to increase social assistance, including to person with disability, is less than 1% of GDP. It's more than affordable for the government to fund this program. And we said, how are we going to do it? Do we need to introduce new taxes? The answer is no. Because if the government wants to reduce fuel subsidy, who should you give it to? You should give it to these people. Not only is help them on the cost of living, but improve social mobility. Because it improve their health conditions, education outcomes.
One question.
Hi, my name is Sakti. I am voice from PA speakers, but is this okay? So, first of all, I want to thank UNICEF for actually putting down on paper what the community has been saying for a very, very long time. We have not been, the disabled community has not been, I want to say, given equitable assistance, support over the pandemic, and continuing towards now. But one of the things, I have many questions, but one of the ones that I will ask right now is, were these recommendations that you made cognizant of the, I want to see the legal parameters on disabled persons. For, I give you an example, disabled persons are not protected in employment at all from discrimination. There is no discrimination protection. So 2% of head of households are employed. They are extremely lucky to be employed. The government hasn't even fulfilled the 1% disabled persons in civil service quota, a 30-year-old policy. So my question would be, if one, were these recommendations made in mind with those realities in place, or now that you know that those realities are in place, would you in future change recommendations? For example, one of the things that we recommended is mandate discrimination protections and equal opportunity policies in employment, and the government can start from the 1% OPE policy. So that's my question. Thank you.
I think this is a great point that you're raising. I think what we're trying to do is also respond from what we're seeing on this from this data. So we're seeing in this case, and here employment doesn't mean employment only, under companies or public employment, but also self-employed. But what we're really seeing is that even those that are lucky to be employed, as you put in, they're earning very low wages. So even much lower. So for example, female-headed households are much more unemployed, but than households that are headed by people with disabilities, but their wages are extremely low. And that then links to what they're asking. For example, yes, we do need more cash assistance, and we do need a bit more for us to start our businesses. I think this point can actually help us sharpen some of these recommendations and make sure that these are aligned with, also making sure that there's an equitable playing ground, and that everybody has the same level of access to actually getting the job. So I think these inputs are helpful for also us sharpening and making sure the recommendations also hit the nail where they need to go. So thank you.
Sure, thank you. We can exchange numbers after this.
Yes.
We can talk more about it.
Question here.
I would like to ask, is there a need for the government to change the definition of hardcore poverty and that kind of thing? Because I think earlier this year, even the Prime Minister claimed that hardcore poverty in KL has been eradicated. And how do you all, what is absolute poverty, what is relative poverty, what?
How we look at poverty amount basically on either you don't have enough food to eat, so below 1,120 or whatever, not enough food to eat, hardcore. Not enough baju, kasut, housing, blah 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 blah. Another component. So below 2005, you consider poor. Is this a correct indicator? It is if you look at income level. But poverty also multi-dimensional. Not enough food to eat, do not have enough quality education, access to public services. You should look at poverty in multinational and multi-dimensional issues. I would not discount, yes, the level of poverty overall in Malaysia has declined. Whatever measurement, even you increase poverty line, it still decline. But challenges down here. One of the challenges that we face now is malnutrition. It's a national crisis that should play an important role on indicator. We say this is also one of the key indicators of poverty.
Melissa has a question.
Thank you so much, Melissa Idris from Astro AWANI. This may be basic, but can I understand better what you discovered or found out about why it is that female-headed households earn less and are more unemployed?
This is a question that is not stemming directly from the report, rather from a lot of the, let's say, data and engagement that we have from the data. And it also links with the norms around what the roles that women are expected to play in the household. So caring for children, caring for elderly, and we've seen that many of these households also have 3 generations. Caring for people with disability, most of the time falls on women. And we've seen data that women are the ones that are going more to school, more to education. Once they go into the labor force, this drops. There's a huge gender gap.
Is it childcare that is keeping them from employment?
Childcare is one of the biggest reasons that is keeping them from employment, and this is one of the recommendations that we also have. Affordable and available childcare, so that women, and starting from early ages, for example, from pre-primary, we're seeing that these children, even pre-primary, that it's starting quite late also, they're going less, but affordable childcare services, even when they're younger, is a gap and could be strengthened to allow these women to go back to the labor force.
Do you have anything from the survey?
There is. The low participation of women in the labor market is not new. National level, I think women participation is about 55%, male is 81%. For the reasons that Dr. Juanita mentioned, right? Burden on taking care of families, not just children, but also parents, fall usually on the woman, and the support for addressing that so they can go to labor market is missing. This has been repeating by many others, and our report just reiterates that based on the findings that we have.
I think if I may add, if you look at our samples, look at by the type of jobs that they are doing. Female-headed households, they are more involved in self-employment activities. So I think everyone knows that if you work as self-employed, your income is pretty quite low and unstable. So that's one of the reasons to get it. Thank you.
If I may ask, Amjad from UN. Actually, this is a very good question, and it's also puzzled me, but I kept thinking about it. I think it's also like Malaysia in terms of gender equity related to wage gap between male and female. It's actually one of the best in the world, much better than all OECD countries. The only country that exceeded Malaysia is Philippines, the wage gap between male and female. Now, this is for the ones that participate in the labor market, excluding the ones that don't participate. My question related to this, it might be because household is one income household, whereas when you have a household, the other household, it might be 2 income, husband and wife. It might be, so if have you looked at individualized income, women, men, in the sample, not household, because it might be a reason for this disparity. I'm not sure about it, but it could be the household composition.
Thank you.
We did not look at single income by female or the overall, as you mentioned, like income and as per household, but that's a good point. I think that could be the reason. Thank you.
A question here from Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon from Malaysia. So I just want to point out this to counteract the impact of this escalating cost of living. So the highest point here is reduce the use of non-food items such as safe soap, shampoo, and etiquette. Does it mean that most urbanites compromise on hygiene products and also do you feel like how does the dollar store came into this counteract of impact of the escalating cost of living, and how does this impact the dollar store, and then even those belong in the higher income bracket goes to these dollar stores. So what do you think of this?
On your first, there's 2-part question. The first part, either they sacrifice the hygiene, we do not find evidence of that. No, and the second part, either they move more towards dollar store. I do not have facts or figure to
there also, before that, we also have a kenaikan gaji that have been announced. But when we do that, there is a worry among people that it might cause the increasing of the harga barang. So what do you think if you suggest this kenaikan gaji and upah, and don't you think that it will affect also the kenaikan harga barang and the cycle will also repeating itself? So how do you think that, what way can we end those cycle so that thing doesn't happen anymore? So, and another question, judging from the survey you do, what is the expectation of kadar kemiskinan for this year?
He asked if the wage, we recommend the age goes up, what happens to inflation? And the second part, he asked what do we think the poverty rate is going to look like this year. I'll answer the second question. Saya jawab sebenarnya bagaimana kita melihat kadar kemiskinan pada tahun ini. Ya? Adakah ia akan bertambah, akan berkurangan? Kalau lihat pada income, saya suka sedikit. Because tahun ini banyak permainan yang naik. Bila sisi masa bulan Januari, low value good tax, yang beli barang 500 ada, SST expansion pada, dan kita tahu tahun ini juga akan subsidi akan dikurangkan. Ini akan memberi kesan kepada kuasa beli rakyat dan kebanyakan mereka yang income dekat bawah ni pun akan tertekan. Saya menjangkakan kadar kemiskinan suka berubah sedikit. Mungkin ini berlaku. Itu nombor soalan kedua. Soalan satu, adakah minimum wage ni akan menaikkan kos hidup? Dia akan memberikan kesan sedikit terhadap harga barangan. Tapi itu terpaksa kita tak boleh buat. Minimum wage. Minimum wage ni bukan kenaikan gaji, ya. Ni base. Minimum wage yang cukup untuk seorang pekerja untuk keluarga mereka. Yang kami introduce ni masih lower, masih rendah daripada cadangan gaji wajar, living wage, gaji kehidupan yang dan negara Malaysia. Dan ramai dari yang Malaysia pada keras yang lebih tinggi. Adakah ini kesan? Ya, ada kesan. Adakah ini tidak diperlukan? Ini masih diperlukan.
Boleh saya tambah? Terima kasih Tuan. Soalan yang baik. Saya ambil kesempatan ini untuk nak highlight pasal isu increase wage, price will increase. Memang betul, naikkan gaji, harga memang akan naik. Tapi soalan yang patut ditanya, naik gaji banyak mana, harga barang akan naik banyak mana? Kalau kita naik gaji RM400, barang takkan naik RM400. Barang tu akan naik kurang daripada RM400. So maksudnya akan ada lebihan gaji kepada pekerja itu sendiri. Macam Dr. Muhammad bagi tahu tadi, memang if you increase wage, the price will increase. But the question is, how much will the increment of the price be? So the increment of the price memang akan selalunya lebih rendah daripada kenaikan gaji. Yang saya bagi contoh tadi sebenarnya berdasarkan apa yang terjadi daripada tahun 2019 sampai 2022. Gaji minima naik sebanyak RM400. Harga barang untuk isi rumah yang berpendapatan rendah, kita track perbelanjaan dia, naik sebanyak RM250 je. Maksudnya dia ada lebihan RM150 untuk berbelanja berbanding sebelum ni. So bila naik gaji, of course harga barang akan naik, tetapi harga barang, kenaikan harga barang tu lebih rendah daripada kenaikan gaji. So saya rasa ini, this is one of the myths atau myth dalam bahasa Melayu. Saya suka pakai tahyul, khurafat. So yang ni adalah satu benda kita kena ni, especially media daripada sinar tuan kan. Kita kena bagi tahu kat masyarakat, sebab selalu masyarakat jelah kita faham apa ni, diorang akan fikir macam tu lah. Tapi problem is policy maker pun fikir macam tu. Itu yang masalahnya. So kita kena, we need to get rid of this. Dan satu lagi, macam Dr. Muhammad mention tadi, gaji minima yang dinyatakan di dalam laporan ni adalah RM2,102. Ini adalah kiraan gunakan indikator yang paling basic. Paling basic lah. Maksudnya guna yang paling rendah lah supaya dia tak miskin. What if you want to make sure the workers are having a good living wage? Okay? Menggunakan indikator, we use indicator. This is not we plug this from the sky. No, ini berdasarkan gaji yang adil, fair and just wage for the workers. This is based on their productivity. And let's say kalau kita nak pastikan pekerja itu hidup dengan bermaruah, gaji sebenar minimum sepatutnya RM2,800. Okay, tapi itu untuk bukan UNICEF punya pandangan, tapi ini saya sendiri punya pandangan. Tapi yang kami suggest RM2,100, RM2 itu memang dah paling adil dan paling fair kepada pekerja. RM2,100. Okay, terima kasih.
Anyone else? Anyone from Jesus?
So this was just an offhand thought I had. In your study, you found that the poor didn't really see petrol subsidies as helpful. Were there any other government assistance programs that they found as unhelpful as well?
There are others on scholarships, for instance, on education. I think if you notice, the average child is top 10. So scholarship and all is not really relevant to them. On public schooling and all, it's not an issue, is because it's universal. Healthcare also universal. So the one that they find that really not useful is on fuel subsidy. So I think B40, how many percent without transport? 20%. One third no transport. They do not have car in particular. So fuel subsidy that we spent 20 billion doesn't impact them.
Also another offhand thought, but by removing certain subsidies, do you think it's going to open up space for more people to fall below that threshold of poor and okay?
If you talk about fuel subsidy in particular, if you remove entire subsidies, then it will be pressure on household, which we did in 2008. We increased the fuel subsidy, we removed fuel subsidy, and the price of RON 95 from 192 to become 270 overnight. We announced in the morning, effective tonight. Yeah? Result, and the following election, the following year. If the government thinking of removing subsidy, it must be gradual, and do not remove subsidy for those who are impacted the most. You remove among the poor and you remove gradually. But at the same time, that removal, that cash, what do you do? Don't spend on useless things. Give back. Most subsidy removal programs globally successful, in one of the countries that most has waste, right? Before the remove, I give you cash first. So you feel I have cash to spend. That I know cost will increase, I have cash in hand. You return back. You don't cut without giving. You don't cut by saying, I'm going to spend on public transport. I don't feel. You give me cash, I feel. There more public acceptance if you remove subsidy by giving directly to the rakyat. Remove from the rich and you transfer to the left non-rich. What's happening now is actually the reverse. We actually subsidize a lot of the rich, not just remove petrol. If you are below 5,000, how much cash do you get? Sumbangan tunai ramah. How much? 2,500. 2,500 is the highest amount. If you are between 2,500 and 2,000, I think at 750. That's about RM2 per day. 750 per year. If I buy an EV, there's no limit on the subsidy. I buy EV for 100,000, my subsidy is about 200,000. One time. And those who buy those cars are very loaded. I got taxpayer funded subsidy is 200,000. Taxpayer funded subsidy to the poor, maximum 2,500. Is that fair? It's not a question not enough money. It's about reallocation. It's better to allocate to these guys. Education better, health better, social mobility much better. Investment that gives the greatest return not but few subsidy blanket to everybody which benefit the rich, nor even revenue forgone by giving subsidy to buy EV car. Even in Singapore, they cap about I think $15,000 US, 15,000 Sing. We give blanket, you buy a Porsche EV, you get excise tax zero, sales tax zero, import duty zero. That's 300,000. Paid by whom? Paid by those guys, these guys.
So how do we ensure that that if the government pressure the rich, and then the rich that hold these economic powers, you know, let's say for example, one rich person probably have like 10 or 12 staff under him who actually belongs to the lower income bracket. So if he feels pressured, so he's going to implement any austerity measure in his company. How do the government quantify or ensure that will not happen?
So if I can rephrase, brother, I'm saying if we increase tax or remove subsidy, the rich will transfer to the staff or the cabul. The rich will not cabul. They have the best life here. The tax is very low compared to rich family. You go to Australia, you go to UK, you go to US, your tax is much higher. They take half of your tax. Here it's not. tax collection among the rich in Malaysia is much less. Tax is mostly regressive, although the government has imposed some new taxes to make it more progressive. What can they do to their staff? They kept salary. I have no idea what they're going to do. But one thing to be together is this: minimum wage, give a fair wage, protect them. That kalau they sakit on the way to work, so protect. For old age, then pension. So employment protection, fair taxation, all these are important policies to ensure everybody. It's not to punish the rich. Taxation, social is fair to everybody. Then we can say our economic structure, our development agenda is inclusive, not punitive to some certain groups. I think most of you have my phone number. If you have any question, you can call me, ask me, text me, or Dr. Juanita or Dr. Zuri. And if you have comments, feedback from experts, Dr. Amjad is here from UM, Richard is also here. Can give their comments too. Thank you very much.
All right, that ends the session for today. Thank you all for your time and for spending your morning with us. If you have any questions or you want interviews, the experts are here, as pointed out by Dr. Muhammad. Thank you so much.
Please have coffee.
Yeah, there's breakfast served.